Travis,
Sup, dude?
how you doing?
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year! Yippee!
It is the New Year's come and gone. I think it's January 2nd. What day is this? Who
It's
knows? It's
yeah,
2024 though. It's kind of weird. I will spend the next month writing checks and putting 2023.
yeah. Oh yeah. You still write checks, huh?
I do. I live in the Middle Ages.
Yeah, I know. Me too.
I write like 2 checks a month these days, but it's still enough for me to go, oh yeah, I got to remind myself of the year. New Year is interesting. The first thing I do on the New Year, though, is always play U2's New Year's Day.
Oh,
First song I listen to.
very good. Why do you do that?
It's just a nostalgic kind of thing. It takes me back to when I was a teenager. I love those old U2, the old U2 catalog from the 80s. Kind of
Yeah.
bordered on like rock and punk and progressive, and so just so good. But you doing okay?
I'm doing great. I'm really looking forward to what we're going to do this year on the show. So, welcome to Notes On with Travis and Ross, and we are going to try to do Christ on Purpose this year. We've got a series planned. And
This may be our arc for like an entire year.
But it could go on for the rest of our lives. Here's what we're going to do.
Especially if we die tomorrow.
People will be glad that's done. Oh, man. So let me tell you a story, Travis, about why I personally want to do this. But let's talk first about what we're going to do. Do you want to sort of introduce the subject, and then I'll give my reasons for wanting to do it?
Sure. So we're actually recording this after having done one set of interviews with an Anglican priest. Your pastor.
That's right.
Priest. But we want to introduce this because what we're doing is we're going to be interviewing people from different faith traditions, not non-Christian traditions, but Christian traditions. So the first guy that we're going to put his feet to the fire a little bit and ask him to defend himself. And he did a great job. It was a fun conversation. And we may even do more interviews with him, but we are going to be interviewing people of other faith traditions within the Christian church. And we're going to be asking them questions like, well, why did you gravitate to this tradition? What does salvation mean to you?
Yeah.
Why are you what you are? And we're going to learn the differences between the various denominations in this process. And you and I might ourselves make an adjustment in what we think or believe or do in light of this escapade.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you the story, Travis, of how I got excited about this. I've been a Protestant my whole life in sort of the evangelical tradition.
Mm-hmm.
But I was always aware that there was something missing. I felt like, the Protestant church is great at talking about salvation, but many of the Protestant traditions are not very good at the whole sanctification process. What happens after you're saved? Yeah. And man, that's vitally, vitally important. And, I got involved with Reasons to Believe and Hugh Ross and all of that. And intellectually, it was extremely satisfying. And there just wasn't any doubt that, there is a God, that he is the God of the Bible, that Jesus was a real person who died and rose. And I got really involved with all the apologetic arguments. But in many ways, my heart was still kind of empty. And I realized there's more to what the Bible says about the Christian walk than a lot of evangelical churches like to talk about. And a few years ago, my wife and I got invited to an Anglican service by some friends who had left the church we were going to. And I really enjoyed it. It was my first, I was in my 60s, and I'd never been in a church service that was highly liturgical. and I really grew to like it. And my wife and I found a church that's a little closer to us in Burbank, California, that we really like. And there's it's all about uh, living the Christian life in a way that's honoring to the Lord and growing in your faith and learning how to love and learning how to do the service with other people and appreciating the Eucharist, which is, I don't ever want to go to a church again, Travis, that doesn't do communion every week. I
Sure.
just find it as fulfilling and satisfying and necessary as a good, intelligent sermon.
Absolutely.
And I guess I started studying all these other faiths too. I'm like, wow, this is great. What else is out there in the Christian traditions that I don't know anything about? So started reading about Catholicism and reading about Orthodoxy. I've even been a few times to Messianic temples. There's a couple out here that are really good. And so I sort of had this epiphany a few months ago. I was thinking about all of this, and I realized, there's salvation with the real God, the true God, is available in all of these traditions. And all of a sudden, my guard went down. Like, why do I have to be antagonistic towards the Catholic Church or just push away, friends that are Orthodox, like you guys just don't get it? I realized I was really doing that out of prejudice. And I thought, okay, I'm going to learn. I want to start reading. There's probably stuff in these traditions that I personally could really, really benefit from. And so what you and I are going to do here for the next however long we go is in these Christian traditions that talk about, that are Orthodox in their theology. We're not going to do Jehovah's Witness or Mormonism or even liberal Christianity, the ones that confess that Jesus is the Christ.
As an historical, actual, real fact.
That's right. That's right.
Our progressive / liberal friends will say, well, Jesus is the Christ, but they always qualify that with "for me,"
right?
Or
right.
As a metaphor for our hope for a better tomorrow, something cheesy like that, and it just emasculates the entire thing. You just, what's the point of believing if you think that?
So, right. And if they want to say that, they can do their own show, but we're not going to talk to them on this show.
Well, they're not Christians. I mean, let's just face it.
That's right. That's how I feel about it. So I thought, Travis, let's do some shows on this where we interview people of other, like you said, Christian faith traditions that are within the Orthodox understanding of the faith, and see where it goes. And the differences between Protestant and a Catholic are profound and real. And I don't want to be one of those people that just talks about, ecumenism and let's all get along and not really debate the issues. But I want to debate and talk about the differences, but with a charitable attitude that where I see myself as we're standing on the same side of the line.
Right.
Not on opposite sides. And my wife said something a few months ago when I was talking to her about all of this that really framed the whole thing amazingly well. She said, if we're ever in prison for our faith and the other person in the prison cell is a Catholic, we're just not going to care. We're going to be very happy to have someone to pray with who believes in the same God. And,
Sure.
Travis, when you really open this stuff up, when you look at Catholic, you open a book about Catholic doctrine or Orthodox Church, most of what we believe is common.
Yeah.
Like I say, the differences are real and need to be discussed, but why do we always beat each other up over the differences rather than praying with each other and appreciating the commonalities? And so what I want to do on the show is do both.
Sure.
I don't want to do one or the other. I want to do the hard thing, which is appreciate what we can do together and really, in a spirit of love and charity, talk about the differences.
Which is a commendable goal, and I'm right here with you on this. I've never I don't think there's a whole lot you have to believe to experience what the Bible calls salvation. In terms of what you actually have to mentally affirm as the gospel is initially given to you, the list is very short.
What do you think that list is?
I think you have to be an Abrahamic theist. You have to say that there is one personal deity who is all-knowing, all-powerful, and all good, and has a few characteristics that are just absolutely core to Abrahamic theism, such as this God created the universe out of nothing and sustains it in existence, and created the human race in his own image, and is the locus of our moral values. So that's a minimal commitment to Abrahamic theism. But that only qualifies you to be either a Christian or a Jew or a Muslim. So you have to believe more than that to be a Christian and therefore be saved. And so the other thing you have to believe is that Jesus of Nazareth, the historical person, Jesus of Nazareth, was and is the Messiah of Israel and the unique Son of God. And that this Jesus died for our sins, was buried, was raised again on the third day, and appeared to his earliest followers. Now, in terms of the content of your faith, you have to affirm those things. That doesn't mean you're saved just because you mentally affirm those things. But that's a minimal set of beliefs that you have to assent to before you can experience what the Bible calls salvation. Now, some people mentally assent to these things as they're experiencing salvation. And some people mentally assent to these things for years before they experience salvation. But regardless, you have to actually mentally assent to those things. Now, of course, being saved means fully relying upon Jesus and Jesus alone as your Savior. Now, I think that if all of those things are true of you, you've fully relied on Christ, and it's the Christ that's revealed in the content that I just expressed, I think that makes you a saved person. But that doesn't make you consistent. That doesn't mean you're consistently Christian. But I'm so thankful we're saved by grace and not consistency. And so the question now is, which version of Christianity is the most consistent with that core claim or those core claims? And then I would move on from there.
And here's something heretical. What if none of them are the closest?
Right,
but
that's possible.
Each of them have really insanely valuable and true and practical teachings that will get me closer to God, and each of them have some blind spots.
Yeah. I mean, I have no doubt that all of them have blind spots. The Presbyterians, the Catholics, and everybody in between, Baptists, they all have blind spots. I guess the question is can we speak of any one of those, blind spots notwithstanding, as the closest to the truth?
Well, I guess that's our goal for this year, isn't it? We're going to try, each of us, to figure that out. And it's a divine undertaking. It's a serious undertaking. It's
sure.
This is frightening and really exciting at the same time.
Oh yeah. But if what I just said about those core beliefs is true, I don't know why it is frightening for a lot of people. So what you said is factually true, but I don't know why it should be true. I mean, I remember years ago when I was I was dialoguing with Hector Avalos, and for those that don't know, Hector Avalos was one of the leading atheistic scholars, biblical scholar who was an atheist. He died a few years ago, and always very kind to me. And so he and I developed a friendship, but he wrote 3 essays against me. and they were posted on Debunking Christianity, the website run by John Loftus. And I was intimidated, but I was also like, the worst thing that can happen to a person is be ignored. So the fact that he was pummeling me in his, as it was a compliment. But one of the things that he argued is that the best attested miracle outside the resurrection is the Medjugorje apparitions. So this is Mary appearing to some teenagers in Yugoslavia, and our friend Ken Samples actually wrote a book on this. And before I even met Ken, I had read his book, and I used some of Ken's insights to answer Hector. But what was really interesting is I said, I don't think that the parallels that you can make between the Medjugorje apparitions and the resurrection, I don't think that those parallels are sound. I think that there's a huge difference between the evidence for those apparitions and Jesus' resurrection. However, what if you convince me? What if you convince me that the Medjugorje apparitions are actually appearances of the historical Mary to these teenagers?
Mm-hmm.
What have you done? Well, at the most, you've convinced me to become a Roman Catholic. And last I checked, Catholics did believe in the resurrection. So that's not a refutation of the resurrection.
That's right.
And so I kind of went into this wholly unfazed, like, okay, so I become a Catholic. I'm only going to become a Catholic if I think that that is the most consistent expression of Christianity, and I'll be all the better for it. So instead of having our blinders on and being afraid to change our traditions because, I don't want to change, maybe we should open up our eyes a little bit and explore this and come to the conclusion that we think is the most reasonable and the most consistent with respect to Scripture and our faith commitment to Christ and so forth.
Yeah. I guess my prayer in this, Travis, is, and I think it should be everybody's prayer that's a follower of Jesus Christ, is, Lord, I want to know you more than I do and as best as I can. And I want to be on both an intellectual and personal path towards that. And I want to be fearless in going wherever I need to go to be able to do that. And so, with some fearlessness and some trepidation, here we go.
Sure. Yeah.
I want this. And, who are you and I, Travis, to judge this? This is an interesting question to me. I think when we talk to some Catholic people, they're going to say, you guys are just doing the Protestant thing and cutting the chain to the anchor and drifting off into la la land, thinking you can judge the truth of these doctrines. How would you answer that?
I've never been impressed with that kind of question because, every single person is making a judgment about these and many other things. It's kind of like when I'm talking to the radical feminist who says that I have no right to make any kind of statements about the abortion issue because I'm a man. And it's like, well, that's just a stupid statement. I mean, let's just face it. I am a human being. I was once conceived in a womb myself. Most of the women that make that kind of statement, many of them don't even have or never have had children themselves. I'm a father. This is a moral claim about my fellow human beings. I'm saying that these are really living human beings in the wombs of their mothers, and a woman does not have the right to kill this human being. That's a matter of principle. Right. So, I have every right to make a judgment about this, even though I am just me. I'm an individual, but I'm a rational person. I'm human, and I have a moral compass. And I'm saying that on this particular issue, my moral compass is pointing north and yours is all askew if you disagree with me on this. Now, certainly this feminist may have the right answer on another issue, and maybe I'm wrong and I need to be corrected by her. But on this issue, I'm pretty certain this is the correct stance on the issue.
Yeah.
So now, look, take it or leave it. Listen to my arguments or don't, but don't say they don't have a right to express an opinion about it. And I said the same thing about the Catholic Church or any other church. Every single individual in the Catholic Church is making an individual judgment as about whether they want to belong to that communion or not. And I afford them that right. I don't disparage them for it. So I know that there are people who say, who are you to make a judgment about the Catholic Church? Well, I'm a human being. I have an opinion. I have the right to express it. And I have the right to come to the best judgment as I possibly can on the issues. All you got to do is give me the evidence to convince me, and I'm there.
Yeah. The Catholic Church claims to have an inerrant teaching authority that
Sure.
And I understand the need for that, but it's kind of too late right now. It's like someone who's comes to the realization that there is a God, and they realize that it's the Christian God, and they want to join a church. They are making a private decision as to which church to join.
Sure.
And one of those choices is the Catholic Church. And even in, say, the Middle Ages, before the Reformation in Western Europe, the Orthodox Church was off in the East, but they didn't have really any influence in the West. Somebody would still make a private decision as to whether to follow the Catholic Church or reject the Catholic Church. So I'm completely in agreement with you. We all make private decisions, and hopefully, what we do is we do it with prayer. We do it with taking the decision really seriously, doing it with reading the Bible, doing it with talking to friends, doing it with reading about all of this, and then starting that whole process over again and doing it all the time. It's a fearsome decision that we all need to make one way or another.
Pope Francis not too long ago, hit the papers. He's blessing same-sex unions. And that's not it's not quite the same thing as endorsing same-sex unions, but it's pronouncing a blessing. And I think most people are seeing through this. Yeah, technically this is not the overturning of the church's stance on traditional marriage, but it is the creepy crawl for which many will not be satisfied. And I don't think that the Pope believes that all of his left-wing views will be implemented in the church before he dies. I think he recognizes that he'll be long dead, but he's playing the long game here. And so one of the things you have to ask is, is the current Pope even Catholic? And so I do wonder what my Catholic friends are saying about a lot of this. So I do look forward to. It used to be an old joke, is the Pope Catholic? Well, of course, but
that's why I laughed. Yeah,
I don't think there's a joke anymore. That's the sad thing. I mean, I think I'm more Catholic than the current Pope.
Going back to something we were talking about a minute ago, the Bible has several places, but a couple that come to mind that really are an indicator. They're like a filter, to determine whether you or someone else really are in the church, are saved. One of them is the fruits of the Spirit.
Sure.
Love, joy, peace. And another I think of is, the true gospel is this, that you help the widows and orphans, and those all cross these boundaries, Travis. It doesn't matter whether you're Orthodox or Catholic or Protestant or Amish
or at least it shouldn't.
That's right. And so there's going to be people in each of those traditions that are saved and in the church by that standard, and there's going to be people in each of those traditions that are not saved by those standards. And so that's kind of how I want to look at this whole series as we do this, is really give the benefit of the doubt to these traditions. I want to ask these people some tough questions, but like I say, we're doing it with charity and love, and we're all on the same side here.
Right. Yeah. The invisible church, and I know our Catholic friends don't really like these distinctions, but the invisible church, you can't be saved without belonging to the invisible church. The church as an organism, but you can be saved without belonging to a particular visible church, a visible organization, where the sacraments are administered and the word is preached and so forth. So I think the standard that we should then use is, we have to ask the question, what constitutes a church?
Yes.
Second of all, does this communion live up to that standard?
So how would you define it, Travis? What definition are we going to use of the church as we go forward with these?
One of the most frustrating things about this whole discussion is that there is no standard that is agreed upon by all the communions. So, for example, in the Reformed tradition, there are 3 marks of the church. The church preaches the gospel, and they understand the gospel differently than say the Roman Catholic Church. It administers the sacraments, and then finally it disciplines its church members. And you can waffle on one of those, but you can't waffle on, say, 2 of those and still be considered a true church. But the Catholic Church is going to shake their heads in that and say, that when was that standard made up? They're going to say this is a 16th century standard. The true standard of what constitutes a church is history. You go back in history and you see the apostolic succession coming out of the 2nd century, where you have an episcopate, an office of bishops, that is to say, who give the right hand of fellowship to those ministers that they train. And so there's a line of succession going all the way back, and that's their standard as to what constitutes a true church. So part of the debate is, what is the standard that we're going to use to adjudicate what is the most consistent expression of Christianity?
So what standard are we going to use? How do you want to define this?
No, I want these churches to defend their standard.
Good.
I'm not gonna a priori. I'm partial in the sense that I'm Presbyterian and I have the Reformed standard, but I'm going to open myself up to being critiqued, and I'm going to not have an a priori standard going into this. I do have I have a standard when it comes to what you have to affirm to be a Christian. What I'm not going to do is go beyond that and say, what is your standard for a church? Because I know that the churches have different standards.
Yeah. Very good. Well, I'm really looking forward to this, Travis. This is really going to be a lot of fun.
Well, dude, Happy New Year. And I'm looking forward, next week, we're going to be looking at Reverend Astor, and just, I'm looking forward to that conversation. So y'all hold on to your seats. We're going to do this. We're starting with the Anglicans.
That's right. Travis, it's always a pleasure. All right, brother.
Happy New Year.
Bye-bye.